Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of 5 Drinks to Midnight. In the show, we bring the questions, guests bring the drinks, we try to wrap up before midnight. It's our 200th episode, and we're headed to the Widow Jane Distillery to meet up with Adam Edwards, National Whiskey Ambassador for Heaven Hill. Before we get started, like and subscribe, hit the bells and whistles, leave a comment if you like what we're doing. Let's get started. Joining us. 5 drinks at midnight, 5 drinks, 5 questions, midnight, whatever comes first. Thank you so much for joining us at Widow Jane. How are you doing today, sir?
I am doing great. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you again. I love when people immediately say yes to doing the show, because again, it's just like, didn't even bother at, like, I know you didn't look at it, and it just being like, yes, I'll do it. And I fucking love that.
Not true. I totally looked at it.
It's just,
a matter of seconds.
I just love it. That just means that like people are just down for a good time. So, I guess question one. What are we drinking first?
You know what? I will always start.
Oh, yeah.
It was the first thing that Heaven Hill created, and 90 years later, it's still around. Somehow, 90 years later, it only came 3 years at age. I don't know how that happened. So, yeah, we're going to do the Heaven Hill 7-year bottled in Holland.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Oh,
absolutely delicious.
When we interviewed Bernie, like, this was just, I think we drank the shit out of that bottle.
It's so great.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Oh, jeez. You just cannot go wrong. Like, that is,
I mean, just as classic as you can get with bourbon, right?
Yeah.
Just caramel, oak, and vanilla. You talk about the old guard, right? You talk about the Elmer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And those guys, and you think about when they talked about, tasting and bourbon, and it was simple for them. Caramel, vanilla, oak. Maybe some fruit, but
yeah,
I mean, it's amazing. We get into other whiskeys nowadays that have all these, different congeners in there that'll push it vegetal or push it, grassy or something like that. But that old guard, they look at you and go, I don't put any of that shit in my bourbon.
Exactly.
There's oak and caramel and vanilla.
Yeah,
it's simple, right?
Yeah. And it is. That smell like. There was a cologne or just something like I would just rock this all day. Like,
this is what
bourbon
smell. So what does it smell like? What does it taste like? And sweet spot, 7 years.
Yeah.
I mean, 7 years is such a sweet spot for Kentucky bourbon.
Oh, it's amazing. It just can't go wrong. So thank you so much for that.
Of course.
Question one. It's always an origin story. You're no slouch to being in the whiskey industry, and recently promoted to National Brand Ambassador at Heaven Hill. So congratulations.
Thank you.
How'd you get started in the whiskey business?
So, first of all, I'm from Kentucky. I'm from Louisville.
So born into it.
Born at the bottom of my head, my poor mother. It was a rough birth. But no, believe it or not, I was really not into bourbon really early on. I really was not a huge drinker. And to this day, I always say this, like, I love whiskey, right? And I love spirits in general. Also a lot of wine, which we'll get to. But, I came from a family, so my father, was an alcoholic. My brother was an alcoholic, right? He had addiction issues. I was in a family that had a lot of addiction issues. So I grew up already kind of knowing what could happen. And I think it set me up, in life to kind of take it easy a little bit. So I wasn't the wild teenager getting drunk. Like, I just wasn't. It just wasn't interesting to me. So I got into it kind of late. And I opened up the first wine and spirits shop at Kroger, the grocery store.
Okay, yeah.
And so that was actually my first job.
Okay.
I started when I was 16.
Excellent.
Yeah. So not at the liquor store.
Right.
At the grocery store. The grocery store, right. But so they opened up the very first one, and I was kind of the nighttime guy. So it was, my manager and then me. It was just 2 people there. And in Prospect, Kentucky, on a Thursday night at 7, there's not a lot going on.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I really started, I'm a big reader, and I started reading this book called The Wine Bible. Karen McNeil, who I believe was the very first female masters of wine.
Okay.
Incredible.
Awesome.
And it's like a dictionary or an encyclopedia, and I fell in love with it. And so I fell in love with the theory first. And then I'm working at a liquor store that has a great selection, because Prospect is kind of a nice part of Louisville. It's nice, right? So I'm like, I'm just going to get some of these nice things. They're talking about Chateauneuf du Pape. I want to know what Chateauneuf du Pape. I'm going to buy this bottle. So I worked my way through the book, and I just fell in love with wine, and I still love wine. I am what they call a basic bitch. I will drink a oaky, buttery Chardonnay all day long. I love it. I can't help it. I love it. But it was kind of an easy sort of transition into whiskey at that point, because of course we were in that. Now, the time frame at this point was the mid 2000s, so it was like 2005, 2006, around then, and the bourbon bubble was just starting to happen. So I felt like, well, I'm already an expert on wine because I've been spending the past year talking about it. That's an expert, right?
Sure.
Of course it is. So I said, I'm starting at the top, and I opened up this cabinet, which is where we kept all of our nice bottles, even not just wines, but also nice spirits, in a refrigerated cabinet because we had no idea what that was. And there was a bottle of Happy Van Winkle 23.
Okay.
This is 2005, so that is like probably a green glass Lawrenceburg 2004
Sure, yeah.
worth a car. It's worth a house payment now, or a mortgage. So I bought that bottle. That's where I started, and I hated it. Hated it, because I was a brand new whiskey drinker. It was a 23-year-old bourbon, and I was mixing it with Spragg. I didn't know what I was doing. And so I started looking at the bottom of the shelf. And then I just fell in love with bourbon. I was a big hobbyist with it. Left Kroger, went to Trader Joe's. I was their bourbon guy in Louisville, in Kentucky, for a while. And I met a guy there named Cave. So I've been at Trader Joe's for about 5 years at that point. And Cave and his wife come in, and we get to talking about bourbon. And he's like, I like the way you talk about bourbon. I'm opening a distillery. You want to make a leap, right? And I kind of know your backstory, and I think you can sort of commiserate with this a little bit. Trader Joe's is a great job. Sure. It was a lot of fun. I left that job. I took a 35% pay cut from a full-time job with benefits to a part-time job with no benefits to be a bourbon tour guide at Rabbit Hole Distillery. All right. And that is where I started.
I fucking love it.
It was great. I was with Rabbit Hole Distillery for 5 years. Held several positions there, and I was the whiskey specialist and the single barrel experience manager. It was the same part of that title. Then went to Heaven's Door. Here I am, Heaven Hill.
Excellent. I fucking love it.
Simple as that. It happens every day,
Do you think, again, I know you talked a little bit about family issues, and I don't want to dwell on that, but do you feel that because you grew up in Kentucky that whiskey wasn't a thing? Because when we interview a lot of people from Kentucky, they're like, yeah, we grew up in bourbon country. We don't fucking drink bourbon. Or they didn't drink bourbon at the time.
But nobody was. Right? I'm a child of the 80s, right? I was born in the early 80s. And you want to talk about the low period of American whiskey in the 20th century, outside of Prohibition, was the 80s.
Yeah, right.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think about, when my parents were together, and then even with my mom, they divorced. My mom was married to my stepdad, and dad was married to my stepmom, and they were sober at that point, but my mom and stepdad, they drank, Fireball. Jägermeister.
Yeah.
They didn't really, my stepdad really loved Jack Daniels. Still does.
Yep.
Still loves Jack Daniels. But the thing that people gloss over, maybe everyone's, you've asked this question, gloss over. Maybe we didn't drink it all the time back then, but we all had a collection.
Sure, okay.
We all had a collection. And back then it was usually bottles that were half full that our grandfather gave us or whatever. That's what we had.
Yeah.
Nowadays a collection looks like this.
Yeah.
Half of them are unopened.
Yeah.
And they just look good on our back bars.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, it's where it started in Kentucky, right? Right, bourbon started in Kentucky. Well, the bourbon boom kind of started in Kentucky too, because that's where everybody came to. But really, it was outside bourbon. It was people here in New York, right? It was Pravesh, right? It was people like that. They were the reason the bourbon boom happened, and they didn't even live in Kentucky. They didn't even live in Kentucky. And that's not a bad thing. I'm just saying that's kind of the dichotomy of it. So, you grow up with it. Let me put it this way. When Heaven Hill burned down, so that was what? 96, right? Actually, it was 97. The 29th anniversary happened a couple days ago.
Okay.
So it was November 6th, 1997. Sometimes I say November 7th, 1996. That's what it is. So I was a junior in college. And I'm a tuba player, right? Tuba player. So I'm in marching band in high school. And I am outside, and we're practicing. It's kind of late in the year, but we were going to Disney World.
Okay.
We're going to Disney World. Now, my high school was in East Louisville. It was in Oldham County. It's about 75 miles from Bardstown. We could smell the fire.
Oh, wow.
We could smell the fire. And we knew what it was. It wasn't a bunch of clueless kids looking around me like, oh, what's that smoke? Everybody knew about it because it was what everybody talked about was Heaven Hill, a major distillery on fire. Wow. It was what everybody talked about. So that is it. It's really part of your everyday life in Kentucky. It is everywhere, and even more so nowadays. But growing up, it was in every facet. You knew somebody that worked for a distillery. Everybody knew somebody that worked for a distillery.
Right. Yeah. You talked about how you hated Pappy. I also hated Pappy. I think my very first post on Instagram is I took Pappy 23 and I made chili with it.
Oh,
because it used to be the Well whiskey at Little Branch. Back when first, and like they would give us bottles and be like, here you go, take these. Like we can't even sell
these.
But
you know what? It wasn't Pappy's fault. It was our fault. We had no idea.
But now you're kicking yourself because, like you said,
oh no, my daughter would be going to college for nothing.
Same.
Yeah, it's damn fine whiskey, as Sally says.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I remember there was a bar in Louisville called Knock Bar, and I put it in a flask, and took it to the bar, and had my friends try it, and they were like spitting it out. It was just, we didn't know what we were doing.
Yeah.
I had no idea what I was doing, and that's when you change it. That's really, that's when it kind of started for me a little bit to kind of understand, like, ooh, this is something special. Like, I really, the industry's very cool.
Yeah.
I would love to work there someday.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of our follow-up question. Was there like an aha moment that you were like, I mean, I know you talked about the love of wine and everything, but like, do you remember a specific moment of being like, I want to be in this? Like, was there a bottle, or was it something that just made you kind of flip the script and just be like, yeah, this is it.
There's been a few.
Okay.
So there's really been a few, and as you're asking that, I just have like several that because there's several I can pick from. When it came to wine, I was really interested, like reading that book and several other books at the same time, right? And knowing like, hey, this is where it came from, and this is why it tastes like this, and these are the people, and this is the food they eat, and all that, right? But really started to get, even then, like, it's time to drink your first beer. Right. You're like, oh, this is terrible. Why do people drink this? And then, like weeks later, I can't stop thinking about that beer. I want to drink that beer now. So it's kind of the same thing. And it took me a while to get there. I kind of started opposite, Everybody else starts in like white wine.
Right.
I started in red wine. And I started, of all the red wines, I started with Pinot Noir, the mushroom of wines. And so I remember like going through them and trying to get things from France and things from America, and like think New World and Old World, and then getting really crazy into New Zealand and stuff, like that. It just wasn't clicking for us. And I started trying other reds. But I always remember the red, but it was Cabernet that I could not drink. Every time I tried Cabernet, it got so dry. Because my palate hadn't dried out yet.
Right.
That's what Robert Mondavi said. You have to dry your palate out. You have to keep drinking until you're used to it. Not in one sitting. It means over months and months drying different bottles so you dry your palate out. It's a physical change, right? So I remember the bottle that happened on. I remember this. It was a bottle of 2007 Don Melchor Cabernet.
Okay.
Which is a South American Cab. I believe Argentinian. No, I believe it's Chilean. I believe it's a Chilean Cabernet. And I remember, I poured it, and I was even doing the thing where I bought the thing to put on top of the bottle that, decanted it, spun it around, and aerated it. I was a serious wine drinker. I was an expert. I poured it in the glass, let it sit, and open up. And I remember I smelled it, and I was like, yeah, it smells like Cabernet. I'm like, here we go. It's gonna be too dry. And I took that drink, and I remember how it blossomed on my palate, and how it was just this. It was like a novel. It just there was characters in this wine, and I had arcs, and they peaked and valleyed at different times. And it was a standout wine, and also it was maybe a $35, maybe $40 bottle of wine, which is not cheap, but also it's not that expensive when you talk about wine, right? So it was a mid-range wine, and it just blew me away. And that was the moment that I was like, oh, there's something here.
Okay.
And so I was a wine drinker for a long time. Of course, the Pappy Van Winkle story.
Yeah.
It was Makers kind of did the same thing for bourbon for me.
Okay.
Loved it so much, got a Makers tattoo.
Yes.
I have a Makers tattoo right below my UK tattoo. And that was really something I did with my brother. We talked about something, but yeah, and then just started exploring, Evan Williams, right? Elijah Craig.
Yeah.
I remember very early on, I mean, it's kind of funny, I think back about it now, Elijah Craig, that was the fancy bottle.
Yeah.
That was the special stuff back then, right? It was like that and Woodford.
Yep.
Because in college, everybody drank Buffalo Trace.
Yep.
Buffalo Trace or, Evan Williams.
Yeah. Get that handle for what?
Yeah.
12 bucks.
Yeah. Well, when you were feeling fancy, you got, a bottle of Elijah Craig. Yeah. So, that to me, I think that's when I really started to understand bourbon a little bit. Finding community in bourbon.
Okay.
I remember when that happened, and it was Reddit, believe it or not.
All right.
Right, the subreddit, which is maybe the most cynical place on the entire internet, subreddit bourbon, but comes from a good place. The moderators basically, Jay, he's incredible. Jay's a great guy, a really good friend of mine. But it was finding that community there. And then I started doing reviews just by myself, just writing, getting a bottle and write a review, taking a nice picture of it, post it on there. Look at how many people upvoted, and you're like, oh, it's the community, it's the conversation, or you say something, you don't get the upvotes, you're like, oh, they didn't like that. They're the worst. I'm not the problem, they're the problem. So that moment, like finding community in it, was really a big moment for me. I always do say this though, I think that the drink that sort of changed my life, was the first time I went on a distillery tour, which was also the first time that I tasted whiskey directly out of the barrel.
Okay.
Right? And it was at Barton.
Oh.
They don't even do tours anymore.
All right.
They don't even do tours anymore. And I was working at Trader Joe's, and I set up a tour, a whole weekend of tours for the people that worked there. We all did it together.
Awesome.
And we had like several set up. And we went to Barton, and what's crazy about this is the director of experiences for Heaven Hill Education, in Barnstown, right? He was my tour guide.
Okay.
Yeah. And we realized it years later, right? We're going around, we're walking around the Rick House, when you took that tour, they showed you started at the spring, the distillery was built around, and then at the end of it, you're going through warehouses where they were like pallet wrapping on machines, like rock gut gin to go to Europe or whatever, you know what I mean? And so we went to a Rick House, and there was barrels laid out. He goes, oh, we're gonna pick single barrels, which this is, I want to say, 2012.
All right.
So single barrels were a thing, but a lot of people didn't know about it.
Right.
And he was like, well, let's taste some of them. That was the first time I had bourbon out of a barrel.
Okay.
And the word that immediately hit me was butter.
Oh.
Was butter. And I even think back about that sometimes in my career, because I'm like, you don't really want to taste butter. That means there's something wrong in your fermentation when it comes to whiskey. You don't want to taste butter. You don't want that malolactic, I think is what it is. You don't want that fermentation, right? So that's being something bad. But it wasn't the taste, it was the texture.
Okay.
It was how it was mouth-feeling, how it was creamy. I had never experienced whiskey in that way. And I think, I don't even think it was the whiskey that was so extraordinary. I think it was the setting that I was in, the fact that I had been on this journey and I was drying my palate out now for whiskey and not just wine, and it was my Don Melkor at that moment.
Okay.
And it taught me how to drink bourbon. And since that moment, I've never looked back.
Awesome.
Never looked back.
Fucking awesome. And just our very last follow-up, you talked about, everybody in Kentucky has a collection. Do you have a gem in, like, what do you think is probably your most prized possession in your collection?
You know what? It's just gonna sound really hokey, and it's gonna sound like I'm shilling a little bit. It is the bottle of Elijah Craig from the You Do Bourbon Experience at the Heaven Hill Bourbon Heritage Center. And what it is, I don't know if you've done it there, but you go and you fill your own favorite bottle.
Yeah.
But it was my second day, and I was with Bernie. And it was my second day, man. And we went to it was my first day. It was my very first day. We were at the distillery. The first thing they had me do was a barrel pick.
All right.
I sat in on a barrel pick with him. If you've done barrel picks with Heaven Hill, you probably know Syl.
Yeah.
Sylvia, she's incredible. So we did it with her. She's an amazing person. Got the font of knowledge she has, right? So I got to spend my first part of the day with her, and then the second part of my day, of course, with Bernie. We did that.
Terrible.
I got my bottle, and Bernie signed it for me, and then I signed it, and it sits up there. And I'll tell you, I've got some great heavy hitters in my collection. I've got some pre-Fire Elijah 18. I've got the original Founders bottle. I've got the first bottle from Rabbit Hole before it was called Rabbit Hole, and Kaveh was selling basically Sugar Shine, and they signed a bottle for me.
Nice.
And the party went, those are like special sentimental bottles,
That's
right?
awesome.
But that bottle, I mean, that marks I've had some amazing jobs in my career, but Head of Hill, it's hard to beat Head of Hill, right? And so that is the bottle that is the icon of my collection. It'll never be open.
Awesome.
It'll never be open.
Fucking awesome. Well, there we go. Question 1 done.
Nice.
Train's leaving the station.
Love it.
Cheers.
Cheers. We need more. We need more.
Question 2, drink 2. What are we drinking?
Oh, I think we should go with Decadence.
Perfect.
I picked it completely randomly, by the way.
All right. Awesome. Fucking love it.
You know what? So I've only had a chance to drink this a few times. Oh, that's a tight cork. Wait. Oh, let's see if I can. So I've only had a chance to drink this a couple times, like literally twice. So when they said we were going to be drinking this, I was like, oh yeah, just whatever.
Yeah. Ouch, stop.
How dare you?
Yeah. Awesome. Cheers. Oh, it's just beautiful.
That's a wild nose. It's funny, it's cold in here, so all the whiskey, you can tell the whiskey's tight still.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, it's so nice. Oh, I can't go wrong. Yeah.
I'll tell you, the maple is just, it's not that I'm really like not a finished whiskey guy. I think finished whiskeys are great. I think everybody knows that, finishes got kind of out of control there for a while. But man, this is awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, they do such a great job here at the Widow Jane Distillery. They do such a good job.
They do.
Just, Sienna, I got to spend all day with her, and the blending that she's doing, I could never do it. I don't have the chops.
Yeah.
This is amazing.
It's so good. Oh. That's not just, it's beautiful.
Delicious.
Yeah, can't go wrong.
Ah.
It's fun. Damn. Oh. Alright, so question 2. Being a whiskey ambassador now 20-some years, is that right?
Been in the industry, so really I'm kind of celebrating, basically this is 8th going into my 9th year being an ambassador of sorts. It's never been the same title, but representing whiskey distilleries, absolutely, yeah. In the industry, so I opened that store and started learning about wine and whiskey in like 2005, so we're getting into my 19th and 20th year of that.
Okay, awesome. I guess, could you tell us what the word ambassadorship means to you?
Yeah. Being a host, no matter where you are, you can be a host in several different ways. So if you're inviting people over to your house, right? You always think about, you invite people over, you have a party, what kind of host are you? Well, if you're the type of person that's very attentive, making sure that everyone's having a wonderful time, you are not there to have a good time.
Right.
You're there to make sure everyone else has a good time. You can take that exact same idea and you can install that into any setting. For example, we're here right now, right? And my level of being a host to you is, this is not my bar. Here at Botanica.
Yeah.
Botanica.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. All right, here at Red Hook. But this is not my place, right? They're hosting me. I am the guest of it, right? But in this moment, in this conversation, I am your host, right? Even though this is your channel, when the conversation starts, when we start talking, I'm hosting you.
Yeah.
I'm hosting your journey, your emotional journey, your narrative, right? We're exploring that together, but I'm always the person, are you having a good time with this conversation? It is not for me to sit here and talk and hear the sound of my voice all the time. It is to hear your voices, hear your stories, and kind of commiserate together.
Okay.
Right? And see where we line up. That is what being an ambassador is to me. And you can approach that, again, in every setting. You can approach that, honestly, in any way that you work as an ambassador. I get this question a lot. I want to be an ambassador. Right? I want to be an ambassador. Right? How do I get to be an ambassador? My first question back is always why?
Yeah.
Why do you want to do it? And they're always like, well, I see you going to these dinners, and you get to do these awesome podcasts. You're drinking things like Widow Jane Decadence, right? And you're meeting these people. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Do you know what it takes to be there? because every single one of those interactions I have to be a host of some sort.
Right.
I have to make sure I'm being engaging and funny, which is not hard for me. I'm a funny guy. I like talking to people, so that's not work for me. But to do it all the time, no matter what else is going on.
Yeah.
Right now I'm 1,000 miles from my wife and child, right?
Yeah.
And she called me earlier. She's having an issue with their day where she goes to school. There's something going on, and and I'm here, and I had to get right before he got here on the phone, and we're trying to deal with that. It's like, well, I gotta go, and then I sit down, and then we're having this conversation, and I have to make sure I can't bring that with me.
Yep.
That's what being an ambassador is making sure that the other people around you, you're hosting them in a million different ways. You're making sure that the people around you have a great time. That's what being an ambassador is.
Awesome. I love it. Yeah, everybody thinks that you guys are just out partying and having a good time, and they don't really understand.
We're out having a good time.
Well, but
we're not partying.
Well, that's it. You're
at least for some of us.
Yeah, right. But I think that's like, even when we interviewed Lisa, she talked about how there was the meme of like what my friends think I do, and it's like I'm drunk all the time. What my coworkers think I do, and she's like back there blatting, and then there's like what my parents think I do, and then what I actually do. Like there's a weird.
I always like the chance to take. So my family were, believe it, other than the alcoholics I talk about addiction, right? Other kind of part of my family, they didn't really drink at all. Like my mom and my sister, my mom drinks wine every once in a while, right? They were never really big drinkers. My sister is a school teacher. She just retired from teaching like 2nd and 4th grade, which right? What a saint! Yeah. She's amazing. She's got the better end of the deal. Right? She's that person here hiding, right? Can't live up to that. So last year in Louisville at this place called Neat Bourbon Bar, amazing bourbon bar, and they have an Airbnb behind it. It's a beautiful place. And Sagamore Spirits, which is owned by Disarona, right? So they were doing a thing. And in Louisville, I've lived in Louisville, I've worked in the trade for most of my life. And I know every single bartender and server in Louisville. I know them all, right? We're all friends. We all know each other. So we, one of my friends, she was working and she invited me. And my wife couldn't go. And honestly, my wife wouldn't want to go. She doesn't really drink it. She's like, I'm good. Yeah. I've seen you work. I'm fine. I like the quiet out of you. You don't talk much enough. So I took my sister.
Okay.
Right? And my sister, they know what I do, and it was, my sister is this person that I'll kind of be bitching to her, like, I gotta go do this, news spot in the morning about the thing that we're doing for this festival, so I gotta get there and all pretty or whatever, and then talk, and you get there 30 minutes early, you do 2 minutes, and you're gone, right? Yeah. My sister's always a person like, stop being jaded. That's a very cool thing you get to do. Think of other people that don't get it. Like, she keeps me grounded, right? I get to really, think about, I do have an awesome job, right? But I took her to this thing, Sagamore, and it was 4 floors of fun. And it was tasting stations, several on every floor, and they were doing amaretto, amaretto cocktails, they had another creamy one, I can't remember what it was, right? So they had 4 different liquors, right? And it was in the middle of the summer, so we were drinking this cream cocktail, oh God. And so, I know every single person there. I know every single person. And I said hello to every single person on the way up. And at one point I had my group of friends kind of showed up, we were hanging out, and then we work our way back down. We get back down, and we had been there maybe 45 minutes. And I was like, oh, time to go. And my sister's like, okay. And we walk out, and we get on the sidewalk, and she's like, Adam, my head is spinning. She was like, what did we just do? And I said, we just did my job. I was like, it's fun, my job. And I really do enjoy saying hi to those people, but that is my job, even though that's not any of my brands right there. Those were all my friends.
Still work.
At that point I was working at Heaven's Door, and I was really just focusing on Kentucky at that point. I wouldn't do anything national with them. They wanted it, and I was like, let's focus on Kentucky first, right? So I was really doing it, so I knew everybody there, so that was part of my job. And my sister looked at me, she goes, okay. She was like, I get it. She was like, you're right. She was like, that's not an easy job. She was like, how much did you drink in there? And I had the little plastic cup in my hand, and I was like, this.
That much.
And she was like, you didn't try anything else? I was like, no, I tried everything. I was like, I swallowed very little. I was like, this was my drink. I was like, because I gotta drive your drunk ass home. She tried everything, So that's the thing, it's, the being in a back's a good example, right? I was making sure that my sister had a great time. That's being a host. It was not my brands, it was not my event. you're just always being that host. And you can say that you're always on,
Right.
which is a thing, but it's not really bad. I don't mind being on. That's just me. I think if you don't inherently have that, you're not going to be good at being an ambassador.
Gotcha.
And that's what I tell people when they ask me, they want to be an ambassador. And I'm like, well, you're the person that stands in the corner and says nothing to anybody at the party. Like, I've seen it. I'm like, I don't think this job is for you. Yeah. You would do great in marketing. How good are you at IT?
Yeah. Can you do a spreadsheet? Because you can't talk to me.
Yeah, you're not going to talk to me.
Awesome. Well, again, that was going to be our follow-up is what piece of advice, and I think that you fucking nailed that one.
Well, yeah.
I mean, again, getting to be trained by Bernie, like that is there a piece of advice that Bernie has given you that has stuck with you?
Bernie's full of all sorts of nuggets of wisdom.
Drink more milk corn?
Well, yeah, absolutely. We'll do that later. Yeah. But, there's so many things that he said to me, but, Bernie is one of these people that I've known Bernie for a long time, right? And we're in the same mindset, and he kind of gives the same advice that I give advice to people. Because, again, people do ask me a lot, I want to be in the bourbon industry. I want to be in the bourbon. And my advice is don't stop learning. Don't think you're too good to learn something or to listen to something, right? I tell people, like, go on distillery tours and don't tune out when they start telling you the history of bourbon or that it has to be majority corn. Because you know what? There's so many different things. Bottom and bond has all these regulations, right? Every once in a while I sit there and I go, bottom and bond's got to be this, and I'm like, oh, what was the third one? Right? Because it's so much. You are never educated enough. You're never educated enough. And Bernie, I think what Bernie does amazingly is Bernie is the epitome of being an ambassador. The reason he's going to see this. Not think he can hear it well anymore. Get that right. He probably can't. Can you see me, Bernie? But he really does this great job of defining really what ambassador is, right? I have my definition. A good example is this. We went to this bar in Louisville one time, kind of early on, after I'd been hired. We met for lunch, and I got there before. And I saw the bar, and it's kind of off Whiskey Road, but it wasn't a busy day. It was me, and I think a couple of the servers were down at the end of the bar just hanging out, right? Bartender came down, and of course I know her, and it's Louisville, we all know each other. And I looked back at their bar, and I didn't ask what you had, whatever. I said, it was like Elijah Craig. I'll take Elijah Craig and ginger. That's my drink. And so I'm drinking it, and I get my drink. And Bernie walks in. He walks up to her. She goes, oh, what do you have, hon? He goes, do you have larceny? She goes, no, we don't carry anything by Saz. Which, okay, so I wouldn't say I'm a young man, but compared to Bernie as an ambassador, who has decades of experience as an ambassador, and this guy is under a decade at this point, I'm looking at, my first thing is be like, oh, time to educate. Oh, we're not Saz, all that stuff, right? And he doesn't. He goes, oh, okay, thanks. And he goes, well, what about, I don't remember, Bernheim or something like that, or Evan Williams, maybe it's Evan Williams. And she goes, oh no, we don't carry anything that's Saz from their distributor either. And Bernie goes, well, that's not true either. He just looks at me and goes, I'll have what he's had. That's that, right? This is a really good Bernie impression, by the way. I'll have what he's had. He sits down, and I was like, oh, well, you might need to educate. He goes, why would we do that? He was like, first of all, there's a sales team here in Louisville, and they can set that meeting up for us. It was like, but the problems it would have caused, the back and forth it would have caused, and she's just trying to get through her day.
Right.
What is it going to really change her life if I go, oh no, man, we are Heaven Hill, we're not owned by Saz, right? Yada, 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 right? And I remember thinking, God, that's such a great way to live. Just not even as an ambassador, just a great way to live is to not pick your battles so much, but always look at it from the other person's point of view. What are they going through right now? Why do they think that, right? Is it really worth it to have that conversation? Just go along with it right now, because it makes them feel better. Not that no one's lying to anybody. Right. It's just, why cause a problem right now? Just sit down and enjoy your drink and have a great conversation. Yeah. And we had a wonderful conversation.
There we go.
And by the end of the conversation, she started going, so who do y'all work for? Well, when it's very interesting, you should have her for Heaven Hill. It was not Saz, right? And then we were able to have that conversation.
There.
So it's just that was the thing, right? So I think it's not so much what Bernie says. Bernie doesn't. Bernie, of course, was a stand-up comedian. There's all sorts of one-liners and things, right? But it's really about the way he acts.
Okay.
Right, and the way that he approaches people, and the way that he interacts, just his whole interactions with people.
Yeah.
That's what he has taught me.
That's awesome. Well, there we go. Question 2 done.
Beautiful.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Question 3, drink 3. What are we drinking next?
Well, let's keep it at Widow Jane.
Yeah.
Let's keep it there. Lucky 13.
Fuck yeah.
I know, right? I know. When I asked them when we could have a few bottles, they really did something nice for us.
Yeah. Right.
Oh, wait. Oh. There you go.
Thank you, sir.
You are very welcome. A little 13-year-old whiskey.
Can't go wrong there.
I don't know. I will tell you, I was less familiar with Widow Jane when I got hired from Heaven Hill. And so it's been a really fun time kind of learning about it. I like stories.
Yeah.
Right? I'm a storyteller. I like parallels in the stories. Like those make really good stories. And so just kind of learning the history of Widow Jane, it takes a while, right? So Heaven Hill has a giant portfolio. I mean, we have some of the biggest names in whiskey history.
Yeah.
Right? McKenna, and Fitzgerald, and Bernheim.
Yeah.
I mean, just Mellowcore.
Yeah.
It doesn't like anything bigger than Elijah and Evan, right? And so, Heaven Hill's been wonderful and let me take my time to kind of learn all this, do the research, and be very authentic about it, and make sure I got it down, And so, Widow Jane, on the other hand, newer, right? And so it's like, what is that story? And so I said, I came here today, landed yesterday, and I spent most of my day here, actually.
Right.
So working with Sienna, of course, who's unbelievable, and Marissa, and this whole team, and just really understanding how they do things here. And it's funny because when I first started digging into Widow Jane, I was like, okay, I can't remember everything. So what's the most important thing? The water.
Yeah.
And the water, right? And the minerality it gives to it. And when it's Widow Jane, it tastes like Widow Jane.
Yep.
Which is delicious, first of all, and second of all, very characteristic of Widow Jane. Every single bottle you have Widow Jane, that minerality is great, right? But then, today, just walking around with Emma, who does all their, it's like their tour lead or whatever.
Yeah.
And we walk down the street, and then she turns around, and I'm like, oh, it's the Statue of Liberty.
Right, no big
deal. And she's like, oh, where you get the water, the mines, that's where they got the limestone to build the base of the Statue of Liberty, and the Brooklyn Bridge, and all this stuff. And then you start to dig into those stories, and you start to realize the parallels between them, and where they're at today, and where they came from. It's just very cool.
Yeah, it's very
awesome. I think that the whiskey is great, right? I always say this. This is always my toast, actually.
Yeah.
We'll give my toast now, right?
All right, please.
What's in the glass is great, but it's the people that surround it and fill it. That's what make it memorable.
Oh, fuck yeah. Cheers.
Cheers.
That's so pretty.
Boy. Yeah, and right on the end, that minerality, right? From the water. It's the water used, that minerality comes through, and I never say I have an amazing palate. I've been doing this for a while. First of all, men have the worst palate. Women have the best palate. They have the best palate.
Prove it. Science facts.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I know I'm already in this thing, but I feel like you could blind me with any Widow Jane in there, and I would be able to pick it out.
That wasn't
challenge accepted.
Because that minerality is always there on the finish, and it's just such a wonderful way to have a platform for those flavors to sit on. Because we started, we were drinking Heaven Hill bottle, right? Classic Kentucky bourbon profile.
Yes.
Caramel,
Yes.
vanilla, and I talk about that old garble. I don't put any of that. I don't put peppermint oil in my whiskey or whatever it is. What did Fred say? Marzipan. Right? But when you start getting to things like this, like Widow Jane, now you can expand that a little bit, right? And so now we're talking about minerality, and we're talking about really out there floral flavor, especially on this. This is elderflower and like sunflower seed almost.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like just that sort of minerally earthy kind of flavor. It's just Widow Jane every single time to a T. Absolutely delicious.
Love it.
And then of course at 13 years old,
Yeah.
that's just no slouch.
Yeah, can't go wrong there.
No slouch, right? What is the? These are always it's 93. Yeah, they're always at 93. Let me 13. This is so good.
So you talk, you love a good story. So when hosting an event, how do you balance that idea of like the story, the transition, the people, or tradition, the people, like that? Like how does, again, you just did a beautiful toast about people coming together, filling your glass. How do you kind of construct that an evening tasting?
So the number one thing I look for are the people. Okay. So, like I said, we have a pretty big portfolio. And so I travel about 50% of the time. And even when I'm home, I'm still working and doing a lot of this. But I do the majority of it out on the road, right? Because in Kentucky, you can throw a stone and hit a whiskey ambassador. Same story of Elijah Craig, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So when I go to a market, there's an event going on. A lot of times it's a central event. Like, I'm here in New York, right? It started because they wanted me for Whiskey Fest. And then we have a mutual friend that introduced us, and things right. So I don't really, it's too overloading to me to like try and go through the whole week before I get here and be like, oh, I gotta know this, I gotta know this, like, I've got a really big grasp on the edible portfolio, and I can tell a lot of the stories. So what I do is, right before we get to an event, I've already gotten the download on the event, what we're talking about, and I go, excellent. Who are the people connected to this story? If we're talking about Evan Williams, we're going to talk about Evan Williams. We're going to talk about Broadhead, Mr. Broadhead's General Store, right? We're talking about Elijah. We're going to talk about Elijah Craig, the man, and his brother who kept getting him arrested for preaching illegally, right? We're going to, and then the thing is parallels. That's the second thing I look for.
Okay.
I look for what parallels can I tell? Because everybody has their own style, and every brand has their own style. Even within Heaven Hill, you talk about Elijah Craig, differently than you're going to talk about Old Fitzgerald, right? So I am not one, like I never do this thing. I'm never a fan of when it's like, well, we've got some swag to pass out. Have a trivia question.
Yeah, right.
This is not a quiz, right? The fun part should be the journey that we take together, should be the stories, the things that you discover, not just about the story, but about yourself, right? Can you identify with these people? Here's a great one, right? And this is when I think it's fun. It is hard to identify with people that lived 150 years ago, right? Because you think about the world 150 years ago, things were different.
Yep.
Things were very different, right? But then you think about, let's take Old Fitzgerald. Let's think about Mr. John E. Fitzgerald, right? And what did he do? Well, he was at the Old Judge Distillery. And he was the bondsman, he was the government guy, right? And he had keys to the rick houses. And those, I'm telling you, in that part of the world, in 1880, there's not a lot going on. It's pretty lonely, cold nights. What are you gonna do? Well, you got keys to the stores of something that is beautiful and delicious. So you're gonna start looking for some of this, right? And that's what he did. He went in and he got the barrel, right? So that to me, like, I can understand that moment.
Yeah.
I can understand that.
Gotta warm your bones somehow.
Okay, I can understand. He's there. He's got nothing to do, of course. And then you can also see the motive of the guys on the other side of it. And the next day they're going through the rick houses and they're picking up barrels. They're going to roll them out. They go, this one's pretty light. That must be a Fitzgerald barrel. And that joke that they had with each other, and then they start rolling the barrels, because we've all done the manual jobs, right?
Yeah,
I do a lot of manual labor when I go to a distillery. I don't just slouch around. I help them, right? And like when you're doing that, you have that camaraderie with people when you have jokes, and so they're telling jokes about Johnny Fitzgerald. And that keeps going, and all of a sudden it's a brand Old Fitzgerald, right? Like that sort of stuff to me.
Love it.
That is fun. That is a great story. I really, that's what I try and do. I try and pull parallels, and I try and focus on the people, because when I look around the room, I know I've got you. I can tell you, listen, I've got a performance degree, okay? Like that's what I went to college for. I know when I'm making an impact on an audience, and I know that if I'm able to connect you using those parallels to where you are today, to what you would do in the shoes of that man, or this woman, or this brand, or this whatever, right? This is another one. This is also what I think is fun. is doing this thing of, again, the parallels, right? And we talk about, I was talking about the 80s earlier, it was a hard time for whiskey, right? And things were down. In fact, I think Max Shapiro, our executive chairman, very famously said at a NSM or investors, not investors, we don't have investors, but a meeting of all the company people, in like 1985, that was our lowest barrel count. It was like under 200,000 barrels, really low, right? And then you look today, and we have 2.1 million barrels, the second largest holding of American whiskey aging stocks in the world, right? Well, think back again in 1985. Whiskey was at its lowest. That was when our lowest barrel was. It wasn't afterwards. If we continued the trend of what whiskey wasn't doing anything, no one likes to drink whiskey. As Max said, it's resigned to that great whiskey, liquor store in the sky. I love that line, right? Well, why would we start making some more? How did we get to 2.1 million barrels today? If whiskey was so out of fashion, why were we making so much? Why, in 1997, right, when the distillery burned down, and then in 1999 we buy Bernheim, which has the capacity to make more bourbon than any facility anywhere in the world. It makes more, 1,500 barrels a day. That's the most of any facility in the world, right? Why would we buy that in 1999 if we didn't know what was about to happen? Okay, so part A, right there. And you see, I'm drawing. I'm drawing. I got the story. Now we look at today, and everyone keeps telling me about the softening of the market. Bourbon is dead. Did you know that bourbon is dead?
Yep, I heard that.
Here we are in this, and bourbon is dead.
Yep.
That's what they tell me.
Yep.
So let's put it this way: we have Bernheim, okay, which is in the California neighborhood, by the way, which is named the California neighborhood in West Louisville because it's so far west it might as well be in California.
Right.
I swear to God, that's why they call it California neighborhood, right? Well, a few months ago, we opened up the Springs Distillery, and we brought Heaven Hill Distilling back to Bardstown, Kentucky, for the first time in 29 years since the fire, right? And the Springs Distillery is built to not only match, but possibly exceed the output of Bernheim.
Wow.
If bourbon was dead right now, and we're in this slump a la 1985 or 1999, why are we doubling the capacity that already is the most capacity possibly, right? Why are we doing that? Because we know. We know. And every brand did it different, right? Wild Turkey, they survived back in the 80s by just making Wild Turkey 101, which was so massively popular that Buffalo Trace was forced to release Eagle Rare to directly compete with it, right? Why in the world did Four Roses go to Japan? They made their bones in Japan and then came back to great acclaim.
Yeah.
To great acclaim, right? Buffalo Trace did the same thing we did. They started it. My God, the parallels show you again. Sazerac just announced that they're investing over $1.5 billion into Buffalo Trace.
Yeah.
During the softening of the market. Why would they do that?
Yeah.
Because we've been here before. The Heritage Distilleries, there's only 6 of us. We've been there before. We know what we're doing. We know what's about to happen. And we know that whiskey is going to continue to be huge.
Yeah. It's that.
So that is important to me. That is how I make it fun. That is how I make it engaging. Anytime you go to a whiskey, and I've got a lot of friends that are ambassadors and salespeople and work in marketing and also in production. I got a lot of friends that work in production, right? But, I know the ones that go up and they just phone it in. I don't know, maybe they just don't like the product they're talking about. I don't know, whatever. You gotta make money somehow. You gotta make money, right? But they do the thing, they tell the story, and then they play the games or whatever, and it's a fun event.
Yep.
Right? Or they make the t-shirts or whatever. It's fun, right? For me, I want people to enjoy the history. I want people to enjoy the journey of the story because that's what I enjoy. And I used to say this all the time as my toast. It was find what you love and share that love with others. And I love telling the story.
That's awesome.
And I think that's what makes it engaging.
Fuck yeah.
Right?
Awesome. So I just our last question, but it is a 2-parter. But so again, you talked about all the brands that are under the Heaven Hill umbrella. In your opinion, what is the one that needs the most resurgence?
Evan Williams, 1783.
All right.
And I'll probably get in trouble for saying that, but boy do I love that bottle. And I feel like no one ever talks about it.
Okay.
No one ever talks about it. I was in Kansas City. I had this wonderful trip to Kansas City a couple months ago. And I ended up meeting this wonderful guy named Kevin Timmons, and he runs Nick and Jake. So there's 5 of them in Kansas City. And as an aside, Nick and Jake's, Nick was his son, and Nick committed suicide several years ago, and he holds a bourbon charity every year in his favor. And they bought a fire truck with the amount of bourbon they auctioned off. So that shows you how something terrible can make something great. Anyways, so I talk about suicide awareness a lot. My brother killed himself a few years ago, so I talk about that a lot very publicly, right? So I connect with people like that. And we just got this great friendship going that week, right? Talking about that. And then at the end of the week, we did this little bourbon, I think it was an Old Fitz launch party at Zephyr, which is a great little bourbon bar in a hotel in Kansas City. And he came, and hung out. And he was looking at the bottles on the back bar. They had a bottle of Evan Williams 1783. And this guy, who is really good with bourbon, and does bourbon auctions, and knows a lot of people in bourbon, and he knows people. He goes, "What's that?" And I said, "My God, give me that bottle." We drank it because I love that bottle. I think Evan Williams, even at just 90 proof, which is lower, but in a small batch form, is absolutely delicious. And he tried it, and he goes, "Well, I'm ordering that and putting it on the cocktail or on the bourbon menu at all 5 of his restaurants."
Nice.
So,
Awesome. All right. So then, if money was no object, what kind of event would you do to help promote Evan Williams?
Oh, that's a good one. If money was no object, I would have people batch it themselves. And I'm not talking about where we get little samples and they do batching with cups. We're batching 150 barrels together.
I love it.
Because, I'm sure Bernie talked about this when you talked to him, But we've got this great person named Tawny Doty. Tawny in Heaven Hill. And Tawny has been with Heaven Hill for how many years? She doesn't like me to say. It's a lot of years. She's amazing. Well, Tawny Doty this time. And she started at Heaven Hill when she was out of high school. Right? She's an amazing person. She is essentially our master taster. And, Connor, our master distiller, loves to say he does not make brands at Heaven Hill. He makes every style of legally defined American whiskey you can, right? We make all 6 of them, right? The barrels tell us what brands are going to be, right? This is an Evan barrel. This is an Elijah barrel. Okay. This is going to be a single barrel for whatever, right? This is going to be, this is Rittenhouse versus Elijah Craig rye, right? Or Pikesville or whatever, right? So it is really her job to taste through this and make sure they live on that spectrum with her and her team, okay? So those sorts of bottles like that, right? Sometimes, our batch can be as much as 500,000, like for Evan Williams, right? But for Evan Williams, small batch is always 150 to 300 barrels, leaning heavily towards 150, right? Okay. Which is very small batch when you're here, and it's just sure. That's not big at all. So what I would do is I would get 150 barrels, and we would have to take about a week with a group of people, and we're going to taste every single one of those barrels, and we're going to blend them together until we have a consistent, delicious profile where every single bottle of Evan Williams small batch tastes exactly the same.
Fuck yeah.
1783, man, it's delicious. And the thing is I feel like we don't talk about it a lot.
Yeah.
We don't talk about it a lot. We have a great portfolio. We can't talk about everything all the time.
Yeah.
We have a budget.
Right.
Not everything can be spent. No, I think Bernie always famously says, the melon corn advertising budget is the little slip of paper he has in his phone case that's a melon corn label. He shows off and the t-shirt he's wearing. Evan Williams, it has its budget too. Versus Elijah Craig, versus yada, yada, yada. So, whenever I see that bottle, I order that. It is delicious.
Excellent. Well, there we go. Question 3. Cheers. Cheers. Question 4, drink 4. What are you drinking?
Well, there's only one left. There's only one left here. Elijah Craig, this year's Ryder Cup limited edition.
All right.
We kind of talked about it earlier. I've been Elijah Craig for a very long time. Little baby pop. I really love Elijah Craig. I love the profile of Elijah Craig. I was kind of talking about Tawny a little bit ago. How she tastes through everything, kind of determines what. And when you think about the mash bills, so what we call HH Red, right? That one, that's our mash bill. So that's 78% corn, 10% rye, 12% malt and barley. Very traditional, Kentucky bourbon mash bill. Maybe 80 to 90% of the products we make, HH Red, right? It is both Evan and Elijah. So, the question I get a lot of times is that kind of thing. Like, well, what really makes Elijah and Evan different? It's the same stuff. Well, no. Different barrels, right? The barrels, the location, they're gonna give you different profiles. So if you look at a spectrum, I always say you have this spectrum, right? It's kind of like a empty full tank.
Sure.
Over here, this is super oaky. Over here, this is super grainy. And you look and you have a bottle of Elijah Craig, and then we're just gonna pretend this is a bottle of Evan Williams here, okay? Well, they sit on that spectrum just like that, right in the middle of the spectrum, right? Elijah Craig tends to sit a little bit towards the oaky, right? Well, he's the father of bourbon. He's the first to char. You should always taste a lot of char and oak in a bottle of Evan Williams, right? So you got Elijah Craig. Evan Williams kind of a little bit towards the more grain and sweet style, right?
I'm walking here. I'm walking here.
They really love Evan Williams.
Yeah.
Side note, by the way, that little V that was in the middle of that white space, that's where single barrels come from.
Okay.
That's where like allocated stuff comes from. Stuff that doesn't quite fit either profile, but boy, it was really good. We're going to continue to age that.
Gotcha.
So that's where that stuff comes from, right? So Elijah Craig, lots of char, right? Well, when you have a lot of char, it brings a lot of sweetness. People think about char and they think about bitter. It does bring that, of course. You've got to have astringency and bitterness to balance sweet flavors. It brings a lot of sweetness, right? So the Elijah Craig small batch, right, is always going to have that char. When we do limited editions, we're going to build on that,
Okay.
because it's always about the oak. So this is Elijah Craig small batch. Small batch, by the way, for us is in between 150 to 300 barrels, always. But this one is finished in toasted sugar maple and applewood staves.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Now, why would you do that, Adam? Excellent question.
Right.
Why would you do that, right? Why would you do that more? Why would you add? Well, first of all, we're adding more oak because that's what we like to see.
And
more
it's
different types of wood.
fucking delicious.
Absolutely delicious. I say this. I think this might be my favorite Elijah Craig release overall the entire year.
Okay.
Although B525 that was a good barrel proof, but this is fantastic. We did toasted sugar maple, so sugar maple, right? That is the state tree of New York State. And then applewood, because of the Big Apple, because this was in the Ryder Cup.
Gotcha.
Which was held at Bethel Page, right? Or,
Yeah,
that Page,
yeah.
which is in New York.
Yeah.
So that's the reason we did it.
Okay.
Now, from a flavor standpoint, I can tell you that production, especially Tawny and her team, when they hear the marketing team go, oh, we want to use maple and applewood because they're the state trees and the Big Apple, they go, oh, that looks great on a label. Is it going to taste good? They did a pretty good job.
Yeah, they did a great
This
job.
is the rare times when those two things intersect,
Yeah, very
right?
nice.
I mean, really, really good.
Yeah, it's fucking delicious.
It's just more wood. That's what Elijah Craig should be about. It should be about the wood.
Oh, that's really, really nice. All right, so question 4. You kind of talked a little bit about it in question 3, but
Continue to do that. I'm sorry.
No, I love it. It's great because it's just like a good, it's line through everything. But bourbon's dying
Right.
and going. I guess where do you see the bourbon industry going 5, 10, 15 years from now?
So everything goes in cycles,
Right.
especially when it comes to anything having to do with economics. Economics always happen in cycles. We've seen it over and over and over, right? That's softening right now. Of course, there's a softening in the market. The pandemic was a terrible time for 90% of the world, right? Everything, not just people, the things and industries, right? It was terrible for lots of stuff. 3 industries did wonderfully. The home improvement industry,
Yeah.
the sourdough starter industry,
Yeah.
and the spirits industry
Yep.
skyrocketed, right? And that's not, of course every company wants to make money. Sorry, it's a good Bernie term.
Yeah,
It's not a bourbon charity, right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
what it is, right? But you want to have steady growth. You don't want to have explosive growth because you can't hold on to it. And that's what we saw happen, right? And of course you're not going to be able to hold on to that because people went back to work. They left their houses,
Yes.
right? They discovered other things,
Yeah.
right? We are still above where we thought we were going to be looking back in 2019.
Okay.
This year in 2025, we are still way ahead where we thought we were going to be.
Awesome.
The overall pattern is a growth, right? There may be some dips in there, but there's always going to be, you can't just have steady growth.
Right.
That's just a straight line. It
Yeah,
doesn't
no,
happen that
yeah.
way. It doesn't happen that way. So I think people are kind of freaking out from that at this point. But again, we've been there before. We've seen it before. remove me from the industry, I'm just a consumer. I've seen it before. I've seen the shelves on liquor stores become monotone, just 2 or 3 brands, you know. Well, you got Evan Williams, you got Jack Daniels, you got Maker's Mark, you got bourbon. Congratulations, you got bourbon, right? But I've also seen it when I walk into a liquor store, and there are hundreds of things. So that sort of thing goes up and down, up and down. I think that, you know, it's going to be a hard time for a few years, just a few years, on a few distilleries and a few brands that kind of sit right in the middle, honestly. It's not going to be your super regional brands because they're not distributed far enough, right? They're just, you know, you've got brands here in New York and you got brands, well, not like Widow Jane, but, you know, small distilleries, right? You got brands in Boston, you know, all over the place, right? That they're just supplying the community. And there's bars and restaurants that put them on the cocktail because we like them, right? We like them. They're going to be fun. The heritage distilleries, we are going to be fun, right? You're not going to see Elijah Craig disappear from the shelves. You're not going to see Maker's Mark or Jim Beam or whatever, right? You're not going to see those things disappear from the shelves. My God, if Jack Daniels disappears from the shelves, something terribly has gone wrong, right? Terribly wrong. So you're not going to see that happen. It's the mid-tiers. Those brands and distilleries, and I say brands more than distilleries for an obvious reason, but those brands that have become large enough to have some sort of kind of semi-national distribution, right? Because the first people that feel it is not the brands. Right. The first people that feel it are the liquor stores and the off-premise and the on-premise, bars and liquor stores, the actual customers. You know, I hate to say this, people buying bottles from liquor stores, you're not a customer, you're a consumer. Right? The customers is the liquor store for the most part, right? They feel it first. They see it happen first. They're always first on the trend of buying and selling because they see the things that they don't have to order as much anymore because they're not selling, or the stuff that they have to order twice more than they did before because it's selling, right? They see it first. Then the distributors, they see it, right? And as soon as the distributors see it, those mid-tier brands that rely on the distributors to build their brand, they are going to feel it. And when they feel it, they're out of money. Because most of them, you know, the days of, you know, big investments from big warehousing groups or venture capitalist groups or, you know, even private groups, right? They don't exist anymore. They don't exist anymore because it's saturated. There was enough of them. So those mid-tiers over the next few years, those are going to feel the pinch, right? This is the perfect demonstration right here. Right here. And you know what, we don't even want to look at it because it does not matter what the labels are, okay? So this is a heritage distillery, this is a heritage distillery, this is a mid-tier distillery located in West Duluth, okay? West Duluth Spirits Company, right? Well, as West Duluth, something happens, people aren't selling bottles, this brand disappears, it disappears from that shelf eventually. What is that retailer going to do on this shelf? Well, they're going to fill that space with not more mid-tier distillers because they're not buying them, with more of the heritage distilleries, right? And that's going to happen that way for about 4 or 5 years. And the consumer is like, well, great, I can always get my Evan Williams, I can always get my Widow Jane, I can always get my Heaven Hill, right? I can grab those bottles. Yeah. And after a few years, I can go, well, I need more. Yeah. I need more. These spaces are going to need to be filled up again. Gotcha. What I don't know is who's going to fill those spaces. Is it going to be another mid-tier distillery from West Duluth, Georgia or something like that? Are they going to fill that space? Or are these heritage distilleries going to continue to expand and fill those spaces? I don't know. Gotcha. That's the big question.
Okay. No, I think that's a good analogy. I like that. That really works.
Well, it works when you have evidence.
Yeah.
You know, you got actual props.
Yeah.
Right.
Is there any trends happening right now that you personally are excited about?
Yeah, I like the retro trends, what we call new-stalgia, not nostalgia, new-stalgia. I think a really good example is that Hypnotic.
Okay.
Hypnotic is having a moment.
Yeah,
it's coming back.
Yeah.
When I got hired at Heaven Hill and I found out that we had Hypnotic, I did a little flip. I was so excited because the branding is so cool. I like that. You know, you look at Mellow Corn. Yeah. Mellow Corn has the same sort of thing, right? It's like the bartender's best friend. That label hasn't changed since 1945. It's very retro. It's nostalgic, right? I really like that trend because I'm not a bartender. Yeah, my drinks taste great. They look awful.
Yeah.
I'm not a bartender, right? But it's so fun for the bartenders in this industry to kind of play off that nostalgia.
Yeah.
It's a bar in Louisville called Tartan House, owned by my friend Jeff, and they just did a drink, and it was hypnotic, but it had Sour Patch Kids.
Okay.
In it. Like they had infused it with Sour Patch Kids, and it was delicious.
Yeah.
It was delicious, and it looked electric, you know what I mean? But it was just such a cool, and it was like Halloween candy and hypnotic.
Yeah.
This is like my 8-year-old self and like my 22-year-old club going self. Like really into that. Yeah. It's like I said, I didn't drink a lot when I was young, but I definitely had a few incredible hauls.
Fucking love it. Well, there we go. Question 4. Question 5. Last drink of the night. What are we drinking?
Well, I think we have to take it back to
Very nice.
It was funny, you know, I was just looking at my email because I never stop, ever, even in the middle of this, right? And I just got an invite to our 90th anniversary.
Alright.
Our 90th anniversary party. And I won't even be in town, I'll be in Miami. So I'm celebrating our 90th in Miami, I guess. But it kind of got me thinking, 90 years ago we started making this.
Wow.
90 years ago we started making this. I mean, you think about, if you look on our website, and you look at our mission statement, part of the mission statement has a few sentences to it, but part of the mission statement is to be the most admired and most recognized distiller of American whiskey. Or maybe it says American whiskey, but we're going to say whiskey, because we're drinking whiskey. And I think that that's a hard thing to do, because being admired is one thing. I mean, there's many things we've done to be admired, right? But like recognized is the part where you can, it's tangible, right? I mean, we've garnered so many different awards, and we've had how many world whiskeys of the year, right? How many runners up? I mean, those are easy. The admirable part is the part that trips me up. So I'm like, what constitutes admirable? And I think about 90 years ago we made this. In 89 years ago, it was the #1 selling bourbon in Kentucky. It took 1 year. In 1940, it was the #1 selling bourbon in Kentucky. So, I mean, to me, that is admiration, right? And you think about in 1940, how many other brands were there? I mean, you still had the big four, right?
Yeah.
You still had Hiram Walker pumping stuff out. You still had United. You still had Shinley. You still had National, right? You had heavyweights putting this stuff out. But you also had George Garvin Brown who put it in a bottle years before, right? You had Old Forester on the lid. You had Four Roses were around still in it.
Yep.
Wild Turkey, right? So what do you do with that? How do you compete against that? You just make it delicious. You make it delicious.
That you did. Cheers. Alright, so before we get into question 5, from our social stalking, research that we did, everybody that I reached out to, that again, we asked former guests that we have share in common, do you have anything that I should ask? Everybody came back asking about his tuba. So even Bernie gave me this question and then the follow-up for the coin question. So he told us we should ask you about the tuba and how your tuba has its special movie credits. So he was like, just ask him about the tuba. So just quickly, can you tell us about your tuba and what movie, like where it was and like everything. So we'd love to hear about your tuba.
That's what she said.
So let's get real geeky. You thought we were geeky before. Wait till we talk about tubas. It is a 1970 Miraphone 186 5U-C. And it was owned by a guy named Tommy Johnson. Okay. So Tommy Johnson, he was the professor at the USC, Southern California. He was a studio musician, and he played on all the big soundtracks. And he got in, so essentially John Williams and his team, that like they picked their contract players, and he was always the tuba because he used major orchestras to film everything, right? And so a lot of times he used in London Symphony Orchestra or whatever, but Tommy was always the tuba player. Was always the tuba player. And so the Jaws.
Oh yeah.
Spielberg's really first big blockbuster.
Yeah.
So if you listen to that music, you've got the da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
Those are string basses. Those are not tubas, those are string basses. And then you have this instrument that comes in, and it's crazy sound. That is a tuba. and it is a virtuosic tuba. It was Tommy Johnson, and he was playing the tuba that I own now.
Okay.
So what I always say is, if I'm playing a game and it sounds terrible, I know it's not the tuba's fault because it didn't fly in 1970, right? But yeah, it's a really special horn. I love it. I don't get to play on it as much.
Okay.
I also have like a big sousaphone, the one that wraps around. So I play it in this brass band. It's like a New Orleans style. We call it dirty brass.
Okay.
Dirty brass. We're called small batch brass in Louisville.
Very nice.
And it's very, we do second lines and we do stuff like, we just finished doing Shakira Hips Don't Lie.
Alright.
But we dropped it like 20 beats and we swing the shit out of it.
Alright.
It's dirty. It's so good.
Fucking awesome.
Yeah, it's so much fun. So that's kind of like my real fun horn. But any chance I get to play.
Alright.
Sometimes my church will ask me to come play. I'm like, absolutely, I'm bringing the Tommy.
Excellent.
I'm bringing my Tommy Johnson horn.
Fucking love it. Alright, so then question 5 comes down to the flip of the Whiskey Wednesday coin. You can flip it, you can spin it, you can do whatever you want. The coin will give us the answer. You don't necessarily have to answer unless you feel so inclined to answer. But, question 5, again from Bernie. Don't shoot the messenger. Does bourbon make the tuba sound better?
So now I have to flip this.
Flip the coin. Says fuck yeah!
Yeah, it does. Of course it does! Of course it does! Why in the world wouldn't it? Here's what I always say whenever I'm doing like a thing in front of a whole bunch of people, because this is also something I see other people do, right? I just recently had to do a thing where I had to kind of sit there and there was 11 other brands in front of me that presented. And every single one, I don't think I'm anything special. Who am I, right? I'm no one. But every single one of those presenters, it was kind of the same cookie cutter thing every time. You could see people, right? And I get up and I'm like, you know what, guys? Everybody wait until the end of their spiel to ask you to drink. You should drink now because I sound better the more you drink.
Yeah.
The tuba is the same. The tuba is the same. It sounds better the more you drink, but really, what doesn't? What doesn't?
I fucking love it. But that is 5 drinks down, 5 questions answered. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. And can't wait till we drink together again. So,
Cheers.
Cheers.